Okay, so are you ready to dive in? We've got an awesome deep dive lined up today, all about the human body.
And what's cool about the stuff you send us is that it's not just like surface level. You're really trying to get under the hood and figure out how this whole intricate machine we call the body actually works.
Exactly, like you've been sending in diagrams and articles, and it seems like you really want to understand how everything connects and functions.
Yeah, it's like you're building a user manual for your own body.
Huh. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So we're going to take all this awesome material you've given us and really unpack it in a way that's hopefully fun and engaging. We
Yeah.
don't want this to be a boring anatomy lecture, right?
No way. We're going for those aha moments, the ones that make you really appreciate just how incredible your own body is.
Exactly. So where should we start this grand tour of the human body?
Well, I think every good construction project starts with a solid foundation, so let's kick things off with the skeletal system. 206 bones, all perfectly arranged.
To create the framework for everything else. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. But it's way more than just a bony scaffold.
No, absolutely. I mean, take the pelvis, for example. It's like the keystone right there in the middle, connecting your upper body to your lower body.
Right. It lets us walk upright, which is a pretty big deal.
Huge. But it also does this incredible job of protecting all those vital organs in your abdomen. Talk about form and function working in perfect harmony.
It's like the ultimate multitasker of the body. And speaking of clever design, can we talk about the spinal column for a sec?
Oh, for sure. 5 sections: cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacrum, and coccystics.
Try saying that 5 times fast.
Ha! Right. But seriously, each section has a specific job to do, and they all work together to allow for movement while also making sure that your spinal cord, which is super delicate, stays safe and sound.
It's like a suit of armor for your nervous system. But one that still lets you do yoga and stuff, so, that's a plus.
Exactly. Flexible protection. And we can't forget about those little cushions between each vertebra, those intervertebral discs.
Oh, yeah, those are key. They're like those gel inserts for your shoes, except they're for your spine, and way more important.
For sure. They absorb shocks and impacts, allowing you to bend and twist and move around without your bones grinding together.
Which, ouch. No, thank you. But here's something I bet you didn't know about your skeletal system.
Hit me with it.
It actually helps keep you warm.
Wait, really? I thought that was all about muscles and stuff.
Nope, your bones are getting in on the action too. Think about the last time you were like freezing cold. Remember that uncontrollable shivering?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like your body's having a seizure or something.
Haha, kind of. But those are actually your skeletal muscles working hard to generate heat and maintain your body temperature.
Wow, so your body is constantly working behind the scenes to keep you alive and functioning, even when you're completely clueless about it.
Exactly. Speaking of muscles, I think it's time we flex our knowledge about the musculoskeletal system.
Let's do it.
Because it's not just about bones, right? It's about how all those bones and muscles work together to allow you to move and interact with the world around you.
It's like the ultimate action-adventure duo. And get this, you've got 3 different types of muscle tissue working hard inside you: skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle.
Wow, 3 different types. So, what makes them different?
Well, for starters, skeletal muscles are the ones you can consciously control. Like when you decide to reach for that cup of coffee or go for a run, those are your skeletal muscles doing their thing.
Okay, that makes sense. What about those other types of muscle, smooth muscle and cardiac muscle?
Well, smooth muscle is found in places like your digestive system and blood vessels. It's involuntary, meaning you don't have to think about it for it to work. It just keeps things moving along.
Oh, right, like peristalsis and stuff.
Exactly. And then there's cardiac muscle, which is a whole other beast. It's found only in your heart.
Makes sense. Cardiac, heart.
And it's built for endurance. It contracts rhythmically to keep your blood pumping 247 year after year.
Wow, your heart really never gets a break, does it? That's dedication.
No kidding. But here's a cool example of how those skeletal muscles work that I think you'll appreciate. They often operate in these opposing pairs, kind of like a seesaw.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So picture your bicep and tricep. When you bend your arm, your bicep contracts and your tricep relaxes. Then when you straighten your arm, it's the opposite. Your tricep contracts and your bicep relaxes. It's this beautiful push and pull relationship that allows for such precise movement.
Wow, I never thought about it like that, but it's true. It's like a perfectly choreographed dance happening inside my arm every time I move it.
Exactly. And that's just one tiny example of the amazing things your musculoskeletal system is doing all the time without you even realizing it.
So cool. Now, speaking of vital processes, I think it's time we take a deep breath and dive into the respiratory system because Let's face it, without breathing, we'd be in a lot of trouble.
No breathing, no life. It's the system that pulls in that life-giving oxygen and removes the waste product, carbon dioxide. And the sources you sent do a fantastic job of outlining this incredible journey of air, from your nose and mouth all the way down to those tiny air sacs in your lungs.
It's like a complex network of tunnels and chambers all working together to get that oxygen where it needs to go.
Absolutely. So it starts with you taking a breath, and that air travels down your trachea, which branches off into these smaller tubes called bronchi. Those bronchi keep branching smaller and smaller, kind of like the roots of a tree, until they reach these tiny air sacs called alveoli.
Alveoli, I've heard of those, but I'm a little fuzzy on what they actually do.
Those alveoli are where the magic happens. They're surrounded by these tiny blood vessels called capillaries, and that's where the actual exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place.
So, like, the oxygen jumps from the alveoli into the bloodstream, and the carbon dioxide jumps from the bloodstream into the alveoli to be exhaled.
Exactly. It's like this incredible dance of diffusion happening millions of times a minute, all orchestrated by the simple act of breathing. And you don't even have to think about it.
It's mind-blowing when you really break it down like that.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about the diaphragm. That's a pretty important muscle for breathing, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's the workhorse of the respiratory system, constantly contracting and relaxing to pull air into your lungs and then push it back out.
It's like the bellows of a forge keeping the fire burning.
Love that analogy. And what's cool about the diaphragm is that it works both voluntarily, like when you choose to hold your breath, and involuntarily, like when you're sleeping and not even thinking about breathing.
It's like having a backup system for something so essential.
Exactly. Of course, you can't hold your breath forever. Try as you might.
Yeah, I've tested that theory a few times.
Eventually, as carbon dioxide levels in your blood rise, your brain basically says, okay, enough is enough, and forces you to take a breath. It's a brilliant safety mechanism that ensures your survival even when you're trying to prove a point.
The body always wins. But now, let's follow that oxygen-rich blood as it makes its way through the circulatory system, shall we? And at the heart of it all, pun intended, is the incredible heart.
Always a good time to talk about the heart. It's the unsung hero, the tireless pumper that keeps everything moving.
It is, and it's working nonstop, 247, 365 days a year, from your very first breath to your very last. It's incredible.
It really is. And it's more than just one pump, too. Think of it as two pumps working together in perfect synchronization.
Two pumps. Okay, now you're going to have to break that down for me.
So one side of your heart, the right side, receives deoxygenated blood from your body and pumps it to your lungs to get a fresh supply of oxygen.
Okay, that makes sense. The lungs are like the oxygen refueling station.
Exactly. Then the left side of your heart receives that freshly oxygenated blood from your lungs and pumps it out to the rest of your body.
Wow, so it's like a two-part circuit. Body to lungs, lungs to body,
Yeah.
and your heart is the engine driving it all.
You got it. And here's another mind-blowing fact. Your heart pumps out about 70 to 80 milliliters of blood with every single beat.
Wait, seriously, that much?
Yep. And in just 1 minute, your entire blood volume, which is about 5 to 6 liters, circulates through your heart and blood vessels.
That's like a nonstop delivery service, making sure every corner of your body gets what it needs to function.
Exactly. It's an incredible feat of engineering.
Speaking of the delivery network, I've always been a little confused about the difference between arteries and veins. They're both blood vessels, right? So what gives?
Good question. They are both blood vessels, but they have very different jobs to do. Arteries are like the highways of your circulatory system. They carry blood away from your heart, and they have these thick muscular walls to withstand the high pressure of that blood flow.
Okay, so arteries are high pressure. Got it. What about veins?
Veins are more like the back roads. They carry blood back to your heart, and because the pressure is lower, they have thinner walls. They also have these cool little one-way valves that help keep the blood flowing in the right direction.
So it's like a high-pressure system versus a low-pressure system, each perfectly designed for its specific role.
You got it. But the real workhorses of the circulatory system, the ones doing the heavy lifting at the cellular level, are the capillaries.
Capillaries. Remind me what those are again.
Those are the tiny microscopic blood vessels that connect your arteries and veins. They're so small that red blood cells have to squeeze through them single file.
Single file. Wow, they must be tiny.
They are, but they're essential because it's at this level, in these tiny capillaries, where the actual exchange of oxygen, nutrients, and waste products takes place between your blood and your tissues.
So it's like the capillaries are the little shops and businesses lining the circulatory system streets, where all the important transactions are happening.
Love that analogy. It perfectly captures the bustling activity happening at this microscopic level.
It really is incredible how our bodies just keep chugging along, doing all these complex things without us even having to think about it.
Right, like we're walking, talking miracles, and most of us don't even realize it.
Speaking of miracles, we've talked about how oxygen gets delivered throughout the body, but what's actually happening at the cellular level? Because, that's where the real action is, right?
Absolutely. That's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And the sources you sent actually dive into that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I was really curious about that. So, like, what's going on inside those tiny cells of ours?
Well, in a nutshell, your cells are constantly generating energy through this process called cellular respiration. And there are two main ways they do this: aerobic and anaerobic metabolism.
Okay, those sound familiar from, high school biology, but I
Ugh.
definitely need a refresher.
Sure, no problem. So, aerobic metabolism is like your cells breathing. They use oxygen to break down glucose, which is a type of sugar, and that process releases energy. In fact, it's the most efficient way for your cells to generate energy. They get like 15 times more energy from aerobic metabolism than they do from anaerobic metabolism.
Wow, 15 times. That's a huge difference.
It is. But sometimes, like when you're working out really hard and your muscles are screaming for oxygen, your body has to switch to plan B, which is anaerobic metabolism.
Ah, so that's what's happening when I'm gasping for air after a sprint. Tell me more about this anaerobic metabolism.
So it's basically your backup energy system. It kicks in when oxygen is limited, and it's faster than aerobic metabolism, but it's not as efficient in the long run. Plus, it produces lactic acid as a byproduct, which is what causes that burning sensation in your muscles when you're pushing yourself really hard.
Lactic acid, the reminder that I went too hard at the gym.
Exactly. It's your body's way of saying, okay, time to ease up a bit.
It's amazing how our bodies can seamlessly switch between these two energy systems depending on what's going on. But sometimes, like we talked about earlier, things go wrong.
Right.
Like with those emergency situations, respiratory compromise and shock.
Right, exactly. Those conditions really mess with the delicate balance of your life support chain.
Life support chain. That sounds kind of intense. What exactly is that?
It's basically the link between your respiratory system, which we just talked about, and your circulatory system. They have to work together seamlessly to deliver oxygen to your cells and remove carbon dioxide.
So it's like a relay race. And if one runner stumbles, the whole team is affected?
Perfect analogy. And with respiratory compromise, anything that makes breathing difficult or prevents oxygen from getting to your cells can disrupt that delicate balance.
Okay, that makes sense. So what kind of things can cause respiratory compromise? Is it just like choking on food?
Well, that's definitely one possibility. A blocked airway is a big one. But it can also be caused by things like asthma, pneumonia, or even a severe allergic reaction.
Oh, wow. So it can be a lot of different things.
It can. And then there are things that directly affect the lungs themselves, like emphysema, which damages the alveoli, making it harder for them to exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide.
The alveoli again. Those tiny air sacs seem to play a big role.
They do. They're like the VIPs of your respiratory system.
You mentioned something earlier that I'm not sure I totally understand. Ventilation perfusion mismatch. What does that even mean?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
It is.
But it's actually a really important concept when it comes to understanding how your respiratory system works. So, ventilation refers to air moving in and out of your lungs, like when you breathe.
Okay, makes sense. In and out, in and out.
Exactly. Perfusion, on the other hand, refers to blood flow to the capillaries that surround the alveoli.
So it's like ventilation is the air supply and perfusion is the blood supply, and they both have to be working properly for the gas exchange to happen.
You nailed it. But sometimes there's a mismatch. Like, imagine you have a bunch of hungry people waiting for pizza delivery, but the delivery guy gets stuck in traffic. You've got the demand for pizza, but the supply chain is broken.
Oh, no. Pizza deprivation.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying. So in the lungs, if there's a ventilation perfusion mismatch, you might have air getting to the alveoli, but there's not enough blood flow to pick up the oxygen.
Exactly. Or you might have good blood flow, but the air can't get through, like if the airways are constricted or there's fluid in the lungs.
Okay, so either way, it's bad news because your cells aren't getting the oxygen they need. What happens to your body when that occurs?
Well, your body is really smart, and it has these built-in alarm systems. So when your brain senses that there's not enough oxygen in your blood or that carbon dioxide levels are building up, it triggers this cascade of responses.
Like what kind of responses are we talking about here?
Well, for starters, you're going to start breathing faster and deeper, trying to get more oxygen into your lungs.
Okay, that makes sense.
Your heart might also start beating faster to try and circulate that oxygen-poor blood more quickly. But if the underlying problem isn't addressed, things can start to go downhill pretty rapidly.
Okay, now I'm a little scared. How downhill are we talking?
Well, as oxygen levels continue to drop, your body is forced to switch from that efficient aerobic metabolism we talked about to the less efficient anaerobic metabolism.
Right, the one that produces lactic acid.
Yep, that's the one. And remember how we said that anaerobic metabolism isn't as good at producing energy? Well, that starts to catch up with you. Your cells can't function as well, your organs start to suffer, and your brain, which is super greedy when it comes to oxygen.
The brain is a real diva.
Huh, it is. But yeah, the brain is particularly vulnerable to oxygen deprivation.
So it's a domino effect, with one problem leading to a whole cascade of problems throughout the body.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to recognize the signs of respiratory distress and seek medical attention immediately.
You know, it's kind of freaky when you think about all the things that could go wrong in the human body.
Tell me about it. But on the flip side, isn't it amazing how most of the time our bodies just keep humming along, doing their thing without any problems?
It really is. It makes you appreciate the incredible complexity and resilience of the human body. And speaking of resilience, I think it's time we give a shout out to the integumentary system.
The what now?
Yeah, it's a mouthful, right?
Yeah.
The integumentary system. It's basically your skin, but it's way more than just like a pretty face.
Okay, yeah, now you're talking my language. The skin is often overlooked, but it's actually your largest organ, and it plays a super important role in protecting you from the outside world.
It's true. It's like our own personal suit of armor.
I love that analogy. And it's not just about protection either. Your skin helps regulate your body temperature, keeps you hydrated, and allows you to feel things, from a gentle breeze to a warm hug.
And let's not forget about those nerve endings that let us feel pain. As much as I hate stubbing my toe, it's a pretty good reminder that my nervous system is working.
Uh-huh. Yeah, pain is definitely a good motivator. But you know, it's interesting how we're talking about all these different systems, but they're also interconnected. Like, we can't talk about the skin without also talking about the circulatory system and the nervous system.
Right, it's all connected. But okay, let's get back to the skin for a sec. You said it helps regulate body temperature. How does it do that?
So your skin is actually pretty amazing when it comes to temperature control. When you get hot, the blood vessels in your skin dilate, which means they widen, allowing more blood to flow near the surface. And that helps to radiate heat away from your body.
Oh, so that's why my skin gets all flushed when I'm hot.
Exactly. And then when you get cold, those blood vessels constrict, which means they narrow, reducing blood flow to the surface and conserving heat.
So it's like our bodies have this built-in thermostat constantly making adjustments to keep us comfortable.
Exactly. It's pretty incredible when you think about it.
It really is. And then there's sweat, which, let's be honest, no one really loves, but it plays a crucial role in regulating body temperature too.
Oh, absolutely. Sweat is your body's way of cooling down through evaporation.
It's like our own personal air conditioning system.
Exactly. It might not always be pleasant, but it's super effective.
Speaking of amazing systems, we can't forget about the digestive system, the ultimate food processing plant.
Oh, the digestive system. It's a marvel of engineering, really. From the moment you take a bite of that delicious burger to the time it, well, exits your body, it's a wild ride.
It really is. But it all starts in the mouth, right?
You bet. Those pearly whites, your teeth, get to work breaking down food into smaller pieces, and your saliva gets in on the action, too.
Saliva? I thought that was just, like, to help us swallow.
Oh, it definitely helps with that. But your saliva also contains these special enzymes that start breaking down carbohydrates.
No way. So digestion starts even before you swallow.
Absolutely. It's like a pre-show before the main event, which happens in your stomach.
Ah, the stomach. The chamber of churning acids.
Haha, yeah, it's not the most glamorous place, but it gets the job done. Your stomach churns and mixes the food with these powerful gastric juices that break down proteins.
It's amazing how our bodies can handle such a variety of foods, from spicy chilies to sweet desserts.
I know, right? Our digestive systems are true champions. But the real MVP of nutrient absorption has got to be the small intestine.
The small intestine, isn't it like super long and coiled up in there?
It is. If you could uncoil your small intestine, it would be about 20 feet long.
Whoa, that's longer than a giraffe is tall.
Exactly. And all that length is there for a reason. It gives your body plenty of time and surface area to absorb all those nutrients from your food.
It's like the ultimate absorption machine.
Right. And it's not just the small intestine doing all the work. We've got the liver and pancreas playing key supporting roles too.
Okay, remind me what those guys do again. I always get them mixed up.
No worries. Your liver is like the body's detox center. It filters out toxins from your blood and produces bile, which helps break down fats.
Right, bile. It's like the body's own dish soap.
Uh-huh. I like that. And then your pancreas is like a little chemical factory, producing enzymes that help digest fats, proteins, and carbohydrates.
Wow, so it's like a whole team effort. Digestion is definitely not a solo sport.
You got it. But now, let's move on to a system that's often overlooked, but is crucial for keeping you healthy, the lymphatic system.
The lymphatic system. I'll be honest, I don't think I know much about that one.
It's a common one to forget about, but it's basically your body's drainage system and immune system rolled into one.
Wow, that's a pretty important job. Tell me more.
Okay, so picture this. You have this network of vessels, kind of like your veins and arteries, but instead of carrying blood, they carry a clear fluid called lymph.
Lymph, what's that?
Lymph is basically like the leftover fluid from your bloodstream. It's got stuff like white blood cells, which are your immune system's warriors, and it helps remove waste and toxins from your body.
So it's like the cleanup crew and the security guards all rolled into one.
Exactly. And your lymph nodes, those little bean-shaped organs that you have all over your body.
You know, the ones that sometimes swell up when you're sick.
Yep, those are like little checkpoints along the lymphatic highway. They filter the lymph fluid, trapping any bacteria, viruses, or other bad guys that they find.
That's why they get swollen.
Yeah.
It's like a sign that your immune system is working hard.
Exactly. It's like those under construction signs you see on the highway. It means there's a lot of activity going on behind the scenes.
So the lymphatic system is basically our own personal bodyguards.
Pretty much. And now, for our final act, let's talk about the endocrine system, the master communicator of the body.
The endocrine system. That sounds familiar, but refresh my memory. What does it do again?
So the endocrine system is all about hormones.
Hormones, those things that make teenagers act crazy.
Well, they play a role in that too. But hormones are basically chemical messengers that travel through your bloodstream, and they influence a ton of different bodily functions, from growth and development to metabolism and mood.
Wow, so they're like the body's email system sending messages all over the place.
Exactly. And each hormone has its own specific job to do. Like insulin, which is produced by your pancreas, helps regulate your blood sugar levels. And then there's adrenaline, which is produced by your adrenal glands. And that's the hormone that kicks in when you're stressed or scared.
Adrenaline, that's the fight or flight hormone, right?
You got it. It gives you that burst of energy when you need it most.
Wow, it's incredible how all these different systems work together to keep our bodies running smoothly.
I know, right? It makes you realize that we're not just a collection of individual parts, but rather this amazing integrated whole.
Well said. This deep dive has definitely given me a whole new appreciation for the human body. It's truly remarkable. And I want to thank you, our amazing listener, for sending in all those fascinating sources.
Yes, thank you. Your curiosity and thirst for knowledge are what make this deep dive so much fun.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but there's always more to learn. Until next time, be kind to your body, stay curious, and keep those questions coming.